Now it's time for me to turn things over to our guest speaker, Dr. Richard Marsella. Richard is the Executive Director of Community Music Schools of Toronto, where he began working in 2010. YouthREX has had many collaborations with Community Music Schools of Toronto, and we're really excited to have this opportunity for Richard to share his work and the work that he has done through CMST. From 2002 to 2007, Richard directed the Parade of Noises in the Peel region, leading over 700 young students in a unique musical experience using homemade instruments. And this program used recycled materials to make musical instruments and was a celebration of odd sounds. In 2021, Richard completed his PhD dissertation in music education at the University of Toronto under the supervision of Dr. Lee Bartel. And his main research focus is on musical playground as a vehicle for community development, which is what we are here to talk about today. YouthREX has also developed a research summary based on Richard's doctoral dissertation that we will share with you as a resource after the event. So something more for you to look forward to. Please join me in welcoming Richard to our webinar today.
Good morning. I'm thrilled to be here. I'm going to be sharing some of really what my life's work in community music to date, discussing music as a vehicle for community development. No matter how you kind of come to this, I hope these ideas will resonate with you in your work, and you'll carry this forward, and we can stay in touch. Actually, it's really nice to kind of have the opportunity to meet you all this morning. So I'd like to start by defining community music. From the Community Music Activity Commission's website, they believe that everyone has the right and ability to make, create, and enjoy their own music, and that active music making should be encouraged and supported at all ages and all levels of society. So community music is open to all. It's cooperative, it's non-judgmental, and it's process-centered. It prioritizes accessibility, equal opportunity, and active music making, active participation in music making. Community music is not competitive. It's not formal, it's not exclusionary, talent-based, egocentric, and product-centered. It's often free and can sound very different from town to town. So neighborhood to neighborhood. In one city, let's say Hamilton as an example, it could be a choir of people who want to sing deliberately badly in a pub once a week. In another city, take Toronto, it could be a choir of unhoused folks singing together weekly at a local shelter. Or in another city, say Cataquet, New Brunswick, it could be a parade group using homemade musical instruments to communicate we're still here. So there is no real rule book for how to get into community music. It's the equivalent of explaining how to be a good neighbor, basically. So I'd like to begin by providing some context as to how I got into community music before it even had a name or was deemed a field of study in the academy. I often say that community music found me. So I've divided my talk into three parts today. Here are some of the things I'll be speaking about in part one, titled "Keeping It Weird," which comes natural for someone like myself. I'll talk about my early music life, how I fell in love with making strange music and messing around with sound. I'll highlight early influences of that lineage that I find myself a part of. And finally, I'll outline a community music project that I helped spearhead in my hometown of Brampton, Ontario. Okay. So, I've been playing classical guitar since I was about 10 years old, and at some point I went down a strange path of experimentalism full of new sounds, teeming with creativity, inspired by bands like The Residents and Ronaldo and the Loaf. If you haven't heard Ronaldo and the Loaf, you got to check them out. Okay, all three of my degrees are from the University of Toronto in music education, where I studied the educational philosophies of many greats in the art of teaching music, the usual suspects such as Kodai, Suzuki, Orff, and then other more underdog voices in the field, such as my mentor, the late Canadian composer and educator R. Murray Schafer, who showed me that there are alternate routes to teaching, learning, and ultimately making music. I met Schaefer at a practicum in 2001 at Queen's University, and we remained friends and colleagues until he died in 2021. My doctoral advisor, Dr. Lee Bartel, thought it would be a good idea for an outsider such as myself to connect with Schaefer, who definitely made me feel less alone and, dare I even say, part of a lineage. Murray reassured me of the core values I carry to this day, that the amateur, in the French sense of the word, the lover of music, should be equally celebrated alongside the child prodigy, that musical excellence is not even the point, that the point of making music is to celebrate, to play freely, and make new sounds along the way. We build community with every note. And I hope that's what I'm going to achieve this morning with each of you. Oops. One of my goals this morning is to share examples of my research and my play experience, to act as a mobilizer for creative music projects steeped in community, no matter if they're in an academic setting or running an anarchist punk space. For the last 15 years, I've held the role of executive director at Community Music Schools of Toronto, expanding from the Regent Park School of Music, and I'll want to share some of our greatest hits in the short time that we have together this morning, in hopes that it might inspire you and your perceptions of what music can do for our society at large. I'm going to go quickly over this, but I thought it was important to share it with you. I've been composing and performing experimental music under the name Friendly Rich since 1994. When people ask me to describe my music to them, it's not quite jazz, it's not quite classical, it's sometimes Dadaist, maybe with a side order of Italian futurism, but throughout my career, it's always been about people and making the music that I want to listen to as a fan of creative sound exploration. I'll play a few excerpts from select recording projects over the years. Here's a short clip of my redo of Frank Sinatra's Only the Lonely album, which I really adore that record, and I decided to redo the entire thing with a small quintet a few years back. I'll just play a quick clip here.
It's a lonesome old town when you're not around. I'm lonely as I can be. I never knew.
All right, I'll ease into it. It'll get a little weirder here. Here's a rethinking of Mussorgsky's Pictures at an Exhibition and the Ballet of the Unhatched Chicks, featuring the great New York bass player Trevor Dunn from Mr. Bungle and John Zorn fame. You get the idea. I'll spare you the rest. This then leads to the concept of irritainment, which I enjoy exploring as well in my work. Here is a sonically harsh snippet from a piece of mine called Pretty Ugly for accordion and harp, which gives you the idea of some of the sonic areas I like to explore as well. Can I find it? Where is it? Let's just... I have to move on. I'm sorry. Technical glitches, but you got the idea, I hope. Good morning, everybody. I hope that woke you up a little bit. These are merely some of the recording projects that I've released over the last 20 plus years, and you can certainly check them out. I'll include a link if you want more info on my music, but you can go to friendlyrich.com if you're interested. From a most recent mechanical street organ piece I titled The Birds of Marsville. It's all about play and people. So I'll play a clip of that in a moment. It's all about play and people even when I'm working with mechanical instruments. So I just think it's about this connection, and I want to really stress that. I was blessed and fortunate early in my career to have composed music for the Tom Green Show on MTV. Those of you old enough to remember that show, I think that pairs nicely with my musical universe. And I've also done a bunch of work in film scoring over the years. Notably, Three Needles, the film by Tom Fitzgerald featuring Lucy Liu, Sandra Oh, and others. And anything goes really with what I'm doing. And I just want to kind of share that with you. So here's a quick clip of that mechanical street organ piece I was mentioning called The Birds of Marsville from a few years back at the Guelph Jazz Festival. I was gifted this 100 pipe mechanical street organ. It's called an orchestrion, and it's built by this amazing inventor friend of mine named Hank DeGrau. He's about 88 years old. And here's a short glimpse. I hope you can hear this okay.
Sound Effects Records number 42. Welcome to the show. My name is Dr. Friendly Rich. Here they come now. The Birds of Marsville.
So, yeah, as you can see, kind of anything goes with what I do. And oops, let me just keep moving along here. This points to others that influenced me. Folks like Frank Zappa playing the bicycle as a musical instrument famously on the Steve Allen Show in 1963. Karl-Heinz Stockhausen incorporating 4 helicopters and a string quartet in his 1991 composition Strike Quartet. The composer Mylis, who uses energy from plants to make music. And of course, the Nihilist Spasm Band from London, Ontario, building their own musical instruments and calling it noise music. And they're a huge act in Japan, revered around the world. And I just really love the fact that these guys would get together every Monday night for like 50 years at the Art Gallery in London, Ontario. It felt like church for them to get together every week and to make noise together and express themselves. There was something really attractive of that ritual to me. Of course, Einstürzende Neubauten playing the Autobahn, playing a highway in Germany as a musical instrument. As Murray Schafer had written on his studio wall, sometimes art needs to be dangerous. This is a clip of Einstürzende Neubauten from the 80s playing the highway. Check this out.
That is all.
How fun, right? Are you having fun, friends? That's exciting. And speaking of Murray Schafer, he took this anything goes spirit and for a specifically commissioned celebration in the town of Coimbra, Portugal, they dreamed up a piece where they played the city itself as a musical instrument. With over 1,200 participating musicians and 10,000 spectators, it featured kids playing their shoes. You see I know the imagery's not great here, but in the middle, that's the kids playing their shoes. A poet on a cherry picker on the right side. 1,200 participating musicians. Just a spectacle. And they were all part of the musical landscape, or as Schafer coined it, the soundscape on that special night. And the indigenous composer Raven Chacon recently wrote a piece called Tiwe, where they did the same thing in New Mexico, in Albuquerque, near Albuquerque, and they played the whole city as a musical instrument. So you start to see examples of this continuing, and it's really exciting stuff. Okay. Sorry, friends. In 2017, I wrote a teacher's manual for any daring teacher who wants to introduce new musical ideas into their classroom. It's called How to Play Your World, and it's basically expanding upon some of these concepts that anything can be turned to music. The idea of playing a building as a musical instrument, as David Byrne did a few years ago in New York, or even a city as a musical instrument, is completely bonkers, right? Which I love. As you can see from all these examples, there is this lineage of having fun with sound and engaging one's entire community in the process, kind of like the Reggio Emilia effect in Italy, in northern Italy, where they bring everybody together, from the fireman to the local bottling plant person. Everybody gets together, kids, adults alike, to make music or work on an art project. I eventually found a strong voice in music education at the U of T, where a weirdo like me was embraced by my eventual PhD advisor, Dr. Lee Bartel. One of our first projects was in developing a not-for-profit organization in my hometown of Brampton, Ontario, where for 5 years I ran a program called Music Roots, where I led a parade of noises with over 700 grade 4 students in the region of Peel, all marching down Main Street using homemade instruments, inspired, in fact, by the Nyla Spasm Band. So a celebration of weird sounds and noise music with young people. So it was like taking this Nyla Spasm Band concept, but applying it with like grade 4 kids and seeing what would happen. This was all conceived with a spirit to really battle the boredom of suburbia, which, using homemade musical instruments, celebrating free play and noise parades. It was always fun to go over the legal noise limits with the mayor, the local police, the fire departments, basically the enforcers and bureaucrats tipping us over those legal noise limits with their sirens. So here's a short clip from one of those Parade of Noises events. You'll see a much younger version of me in here, so brace yourselves. Okay, let me just figure this out. Sorry. I'm just moving things around my small screen here to make it work for you. Okay.
Noise. You can listen to the air, you can listen all around you. It's all, music's around the world. I feel nervous and scared and excited.
And that's the mayor of Brampton at the time hitting the gong, which sparked complete chaos. eventually stopped on a dime. Anyway, you get the idea. So thank you, thank you. Yeah, it was fun to really incorporate the whole community from the mayor right down to parents at a local bottling plant who provided those. There were like, I think, 200 18-liter water bottles that we turned into drums. So it was really a community affair. Um, so yeah, we worked with everybody from the Peel Board of Education. We had over 35 homeroom teachers, local politicians, the mayor, who hit the gong to make everything go chaotic, as mayors usually do. This taught me about what makes a good parade, and I quickly learned from about other parades in history and why they came to be. As an example, here you see Le Tintamarre in Acadian culture. Every year on August 15th, on the occasion of the Acadian national holiday, Acadians from maritime provinces hold a Tintamarre, a grand celebration, basically a noise parade, in which people get together and march through their communities, making an enormous racket with improvised instruments in order to express their pride in their Acadian culture and tradition, to let folks know we're still here. And I saw kids from, like, basically babies in carriages to, all ages basically participating in these events, and it was really inspiring. And when I found out about this and the similarities to my Parade of Noises, I felt it resonated big time for me. Doing this Parade of Noises event so early in my career showed me how important it is to work in collaboration with everybody in your local community, from the mayor to the local school custodian. This is a tenet, as I mentioned, of the Reggio Emilia model in music and community arts, just to include everybody and making art together. Another concept in community arts practice that I had dreamed of was a musical playground. I had imagined large teeter-totters over giant bellows, creating wind sources for weird organs that would eventually make strange new sounds that had not yet been heard before. And when I first mentioned this idea to Murray Schaefer, he said, "Oh yeah, well, we had dreamed up something similar to that in the 70s." And this gave me confidence that I was on the right path with my thinking, that a musical playground would marry up some of these concepts of accessibility, free play, and musical innovation in a new space, an alternative education space that kids have been used to since birth. The playground, right? So I'm going to talk. Part two of my talk here this morning is about my doctoral research, which took me to New Orleans in 2018. And such a place does exist in the world. In the Bywater neighborhood, at the intersection where the Mississippi River meets the Industrial Canal, in a place the locals call the end of the world, there's a unique 1-acre space known as the Music Box Village. This one-of-a-kind play space acts as a musical playground, an events venue, a classroom, and much more. So why a musical playground? Well, it naturally presents strong elements of play, movement, and experiential learning in a recess-like environment, essentially as free as it can get for a young person. A musical playground attracts multiple visits, a sense of familiarity, and like with any traditional playground, a home base. Oh, you know what? I neglected to ask if there were any questions at the end of my first section there. Does anyone have any questions? There was someone that wrote in a question in advance that says, "I'm curious to learn more about noise parades and musical playgrounds." I feel like we're in that. I'll hopefully answer those questions as we go. But any questions, Katie, from the chat?
This wasn't from the chat, but one question that I wanted to ask is the guide that you created, the How to Play Your World,
Yes.
publicly available?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
great.
And How to Play Your World, I can definitely share a link to how to access that. Yeah, that's great.
Awesome. Yeah, no,
Thanks.
I think
Okay,
that's it.
well, feel free to interrupt anybody if you want. I'm definitely we can stop into infield questions as they come up. So I'll just keep going otherwise. Nice to see you. Okay, so why a musical playground? It can equally be important to policymakers and politicians as to music educators, students, and community artists. The recent resurgence of child-led public play spaces is helping cities make wiser long-term decisions about their playgrounds. In pursuing this research, I wanted to explore a different path for music educators, questioning why our musical curriculum needs to be so standardized, wanting to dream of new musical instruments, outcomes, even spaces that have not yet been invented. As the more formal, publicly funded music programs are being cut from our schools, there is a growing need for alternative music education models to fill this gap. A musical playground can function in any city and will take on a distinct reflection of that city's sonic and cultural traits. Community health and playground design all apply when discussing a musical playground, as it has the potential to help a neighborhood heal. Consequently, this research is relevant to secondary fields such as community development, architecture, and urban planning. When I talk about that healing place, being in New Orleans for the amount of time that I was, you really got a sense that it was a reflection of Katrina and all the other trauma that city had to endure over the years. So it was a very interesting concept as to how this place kind of helped it understand itself. The Music Box Village serves as an exemplar in how to unlock the imagination of its community. I saw this space normalize the avant-garde. When we think of New Orleans, what do we think of? We think of like more traditional jazz, but there's also this thriving experimental avant-garde scene there that I think is really celebrated in the Music Box Village. That helps it to become more palatable to the general public, right? I think we try to want to normalize the weird stuff, and this is a great way to do it in a playground setting. As you can see in this slide, here's an early sketch of the musical playground concept as I had imagined it, as I mentioned earlier, with musical teeter-totters on the left there. Even Canada's largest cuckoo clock, just basically a place of wonder and spectacle. Then, as my doctoral research began to take shape, I discovered the existence of this place, the Music Box Village, run by an organization called the New Orleans Airlift. In my literature review, I looked at multiple aspects of musical playgrounds that helped shape my sub-questions. I began with music and sound art, and then looked at free play and music education, migrating to playgrounds, playground learning, and finally community development from there. First, I examined the history of creative music and sound art over the last century and how it all links to a musical playground. I traced a long line of experimentalists who make the case that all sounds have potential in a composition, from the vibrations coming off of a blade of grass to those of a city, as I've walked you through in the last part, right? So next I looked at free play and music education. I looked at the architect Carl Sorensen's junk playgrounds. You see an example of that here, this photograph. This vision was brought to life in Denmark in 1941, a symbol against Nazi-occupied Europe, unlocking the free play of children. Next, I looked at community development as defined by Green and Haynes, being the fostering of a sound infrastructure that will eventually lead to a healthy community. And this is where music and community building intersect, basically, in this musical playground. I was also really impressed with, sometimes art needs to be dangerous, that quote. You see, these junk playgrounds, I would imagine that it was old tools and basically remnants from the war that were being used as objects of play. And what I saw in the Music Box Playground was those were old Creole houses that were rethought and repurposed to be turned into musical instruments themselves. And let me tell you, I saw some dangerous things. I saw kids nearly getting cut from playing some of these instruments and experimenting with sound. So I was part of me said this will never fly in Canada, maybe in a way, thankfully, because I'm not advocating for hurting anyone through the process, but there is the element of playing in the playground, you're gonna get the odd bruise, right? I think Some of our playgrounds these days even have that bouncy recycled tires. Great idea. Maybe a little too safe, I might argue. Neutered from exploration a little bit. So it was refreshing to see those folks in New Orleans kind of taking chances with how to do the thing. I digest. In my methodology, I narrowed my focus to an instrumental case study design. I thought that best fit the multiple purposes and aspects I was seeking to examine related to this one special place. So I established a great working relationship with that whole team. That was imperative in making this a successful venture. The New Orleans Airlift were super cool people that were always down to collaborate and chat with me. That allowed access to archival footage, stakeholder interviews, event launches in the space, and monitored play sessions with a local school. So the Homer Plessy School came and actually played for 3 days. So I observed that free play, and a lot of my findings were derived from that. In this case study, I sought to understand how a musical playground impacts its community from 3 angles: creative, educational, and placemaking. My principal question of research was, how does the Music Box Village musical playground function within its community? How does it fit there in the Bywater neighborhood? And my 3 sub-questions were, how does Music Box Village function, 1, as a space for creative expression, 2, as an educational space, and 3, as a vehicle for community development? In this first sub-question, I'll outline my findings real quick here because we don't have a lot of time, on how the village creates a safe space for creative expression. 5 sub-themes emerged, as are listed on this slide. And there is a photo of Jay Pennington, I believe, there on the right, one of the founders I was mentioning. He was very open. He founded the Music Box Village actually in his backyard in the Bywater neighborhood, and then they eventually moved it to this 1-acre park. The concept started by rethinking what these old Creole houses from the area could become if we played them as a musical instrument. So take like a tool shed or something. What would you do if I said, here's a project. We're going to go to Home Depot. I'm going to gift you this Home Depot tool shed. Turn it into a musical instrument. So basically they had floorboards vibrating. They brought hubcaps in. I'm going to show you some video footage of how they kind of took this on. So every one of the houses in the village is a musical house, basically. The second sub-question relates to how the village functions as an educational space. And being a music educator, this was one of my prime, can this work? Can this space fit within the realm of music education? We always think of traditional music education as being, look, I'm in a traditional music teaching studio now, piano, guitar. But what happens if you open it up to public access 24 hours a day or close to it? All right. So so education was on my mind when I was observing how kids play in this space. This was one of my main focal points to understand the village. To gain this understanding, I set up 3 consecutive days of unstructured play sessions with 50 grade 4 students from a local school. And through this, I extracted the following sub-themes. 1, how informed everyone at the airlift was on the subject. 2, the recurring concept of structured versus unstructured forms of play and as they relate to music education. Structure keeps trying to reveal itself to, not that structure is an evil word, but it just kind of kept this balance was definitely evident. And I'm not saying by any stretch it's one or the other. I think it's both. It's evidently both, and you'll see that in some of the videos even that I'm going to play in a minute. Free play, number 3. Free play in the village, including the all-ages appeal of the space. It really had a multi-generational vibe to it, and that was so exciting. You could see someone, in their 80s playing with a toddler in this space, like you would at at a more traditional playground, right? An unmusical playground, maybe. So multi-generational learning model with an importance of risk placed in playgrounds and music education. I want to outline that. I think I talked about it a little bit earlier. Just a tinge of risk isn't a bad thing. The overall impact that the space had on the participating children in my study, like it was evident. We interviewed them after, and they were all dreaming up their own versions of a musical house. You know that Home Depot idea I just mentioned to you? You give that to a grade 4 kid, and they're going to run with it. And they did. They started informing future designs after I left. So since the space still exists, if you're ever in New Orleans, I strongly recommend you go check it out. The Music Box Village teaches children how to reapproach play itself. With little to no guidance, a child can explore new sounds and ways to make music with others on their own. So the sub-theme of impact revealed the village as a musical equalizer in a city so rich with music history, from second line parades to noise music. Kids of all ages and abilities were encouraged to come together in free play. Next, I'll address how the Music Box Village functions as a vehicle for community development. And in this sub-question, I wanted to learn who benefits from a musical playground, including cities, schools, children, students with disabilities, and others. I analyzed and extrapolated on certain sub-themes that were pulled from each interview I did to directly to the construct of community development, including one, community music and community development. Community music was definitely in the foreground of this whole project. 2, assets. So what does the city of New Orleans have as going in its favor? One thing is, I mean, if you were to do this in Toronto, look at the winter we've been having, right? Whereas New Orleans, they get like pretty serious storms and rain. You have to play to the assets of the city. What are the things that the city of Toronto has that are so unique to Toronto when you start dreaming this up for our city instead of New Orleans? So assets, what do the city has working for it, and what does it have working against it that you need to turn into an opportunity? And then, of course, knowledge sharing. The model of Music Box Village could help transform other cities. As I mentioned, it could function as an exemplar for community development. The airlift has launched similar but permanent outposts in other international cities, each with different approaches, giving a glimpse into what this could be, not just exclusive to New Orleans. Here's a short video clip. It doesn't do it justice, but it gives you an idea. I was just tinkering in one of the houses, playing hubcaps and other stringed instruments. This should give you a quick idea of what it's like in the village. Everything is mic'd up. The entire playground is microphone. So there's a hubcap, a limba, a rebar xylophone, a beautiful resonator guitar instrument. Followed by kids from Homer Plessy School. This is in the Treme neighborhood of New Orleans, playing freely in the Music Box Village. Sorry, this film footage might make you nauseous if the strange sounds from the park don't first, but you'll hear drummers in the distance beating on junk drum kits, horns to honor the steam-powered organs along the river in New Orleans. That's a big culture there, and much more. You'll hear how this playground is distinctly New Orleans. Sorry. Okay. Early in my research, the recurring meta theme of radical collaboration emerged. Bundled in this meta theme is the idea of risk taking and the potential for making mistakes in the collaborative process. Music Box Village brings the radical piece to their brand of collaboration across each of my three established sub-themes in creative expression, music education, and community development. Indicators of radical collaboration include one, confidence in their unobvious artistic connections. So they would bring together a Mardi Gras musician with a local with a welder, and you know, like interesting things happened with these unobvious connections. Two, trust and removal of ego. The people running this place were not interested in, this is the Music Box Village designed by Delaney Martin and Jay Pennington. No, it wasn't that. It was really village first. Like everyone, there was a real community vibe to how they were running the space. I talked about risk taking a little bit throughout this morning's talk, and the anything goes approach. That just kind of, their approach to collaboration is follow the collaboration, see what can happen when you bring someone maybe even from outside of New Orleans and connect them with a local, and see what can happen from there. To conclude this portion of the talk, I want to just provide an overview of the major insights of my research and offer recommendations based on them. So, as mentioned, this study was focused on discovering answers to how the Music Box Village musical playground functions within its community. And what I find most fascinating is the village was often personified. So in some instances, it became the composer in the context of creative expression. It became a teacher in the context of education. So the actual space becomes the teacher alongside those teachers working in it. It becomes a conduit in the context of community development, and the canvas really for radical collaboration between unique participants. From a general music curriculum obsessed with structured, polished, performance-based outcomes, music education needs a rethink. For example, the typical disciplinary tactics used on students with behavioral challenges could perpetuate the power imbalances and racial inequities of our society. Therefore, we must look to other models and spaces like this one to reveal new directions for the field of music education. Imagine a world where musical playgrounds became as ubiquitous as actual playgrounds. This study charts a path forward for municipalities to consider taking such a step. And I'm thrilled to report that since finishing my doctoral work, I've been in talks with Waterfront Toronto to advise on developing a similar park at the new Villiers Island site that they're developing over the next few years. That's very exciting. And the first thing they said to me in consultation was how excited they were to build such a site in Toronto post-pandemic, as there's a real desire to get kids off their phones and screens and simply playing together again. So we're also building a prototype site for a musical playground with our partners at Toronto Metropolitan University in conjunction with the Department of Childhood Studies. I do a little bit of work there as well. So, okay, I hope you've enjoyed this other section of research. Maybe I'll call you in now if you have if you have questions. Otherwise, I can get to part 3, the final part, which is talking about my work at the Community Music Schools of Toronto. Are there any questions?
There was a question, Richard, that you answered around, like, is it possible to bring this idea to Canada?
Oh, yeah.
And there
Yeah.
are a couple of other questions, but I think we can save them for the discussion.
Okay.
Because I think they connect to different parts of what you're sharing.
Katie, I have 44 minutes here. Do you want me to go for another 15?
Yeah, absolutely. Feel free.
Okay.
I think we've been curating questions, so
Okay, cool.
we have time to take them up. Please continue.
Definitely want to leave enough time for questions. Okay, so as I mentioned in part 1, I am the executive director at Community Music Schools of Toronto, where for the last 26 years we've offered free music education in the Regent Park neighborhood where the program was founded. It started as Regent Park School of Music and now expands into Jane Finch and other underserved areas of the city of Toronto. We're one of the largest community music models in Canada at the moment, reaching just over 875 students every week. When I talk about this program, I often point to some of the flashier highlights in the organization's history, which I'm also going to do this morning. But it's often the more boring stuff that gets overlooked, the hard work put in behind the scenes to help our students thrive in the foreground. But, that boring stuff matters. It's like simply returning phone calls, like that really matters. Ensuring folks get paid. I know that sounds, well, that sounds vital, right? Budget modeling. We're actually currently in our budget modeling season at the moment. Sustainability is obviously key, especially in the tough economic times that we find ourselves in. We've worked hard at fostering a culture of fun where we challenge the musical norms and meet students where they are at. Much of this work is hinged on humans. It's all about people, from our faculty, parents, students, donors, and volunteers, you name it. We have a faculty of over 50 one-of-a-kind music educators, and we pay them a comparable rate to do this work 7 days a week. Some of our teachers have stayed with us since we began humbly with just over 71 students in a church basement back in 1999. That's multiple generations of kids going through our programs. Those are the people I pull inspiration from every day. And of course, we have our student success stories, such as Charlotte Siegel. These are just some glimpses into the many stories that we're a part of. Charlotte's gone on to sing with the Canadian Opera Company, and she runs a program called the Marigold, a music project in collaboration at U of T, and it's just a big inspiration. Many of you may know Mustafa the poet, who has bloomed into an incredible international recording artist. He studied at our school for over 2 years, and it was a very meaningful time in his formative years of finding his voice. Milena Oliva, who has become a nurse and is just an amazing, inspiring human that still stays in touch with us. Fatu Makuna, who is working as a flight attendant, and recently Julian Gilmore, who just is about to become a doctor of medicine. So the point of our program is not to send kids to Carnegie Hall, but rather to become the best community leaders that they can be and help give back to their community and build it stronger with every generation. And we're seeing that over time. This work is really about the long game. We're an after-school program. We run Monday to Friday, 4 to 8 p.m., and all day Saturday and Sunday. Ages 3 to 18. We often hire our students to work as part of our administrative team while they're in college or university. 98% of our graduates go on to study post-secondary. We run everything from the standard fare that you'd expect, such as piano, violin, guitar, voice, even harp lessons, to a new synth club using modular synthesizers to engage youth, a beat-making program. Turntablism is a strong part of what we do. Songwriting, large-scale improvised performances, you name it, and we're taking it on. All of this to remain relevant in music education. You have to listen. So listen to the communities you serve, one student at a time. Another thing I learned early in my career is that good design is everything. In building a new music school in the heart of Regent Park, and all the learning that goes into building a new physical space from scratch. So you find me today in the Daniel Spectrum, which we really had a hand in designing, along with architects Diamond Schmidt and others from the Daniels Corporation. But this space was design built, 3,000 square feet, to be a music school. And you learn a lot in that whole process. We've been in here since 2012 now, and we're going to be applying that learning to a new site in Jane Finch over the next few years. We're going to be building a new capital project for a brand new 5,000 square foot state-of-the-art learning facility in Jane Finch. And the image here you see on the screen is of that project and a rendering from the same architects, Diamond Schmidt. So you talk about community building, it means making friends with architects. And Diamond Schmidt have been there with us and believe in what we're doing. So that's kind of cool. But good design also relates to program design and curriculum development. I don't know if you can take a photo, or I don't know if that code is going to work, that QR code is going to work, but you can certainly try. Otherwise, I'll try to share a link to Nurturing the Musicking Spirit. Over the last decade, we've been working at breaking free of the clutches of Western classical music. We have a curriculum document that guides us. It's here on the screen, called Nurturing the Musicking Spirit, which we penned alongside Dr. Parmala Attariwala, and that document has really helped transform our approaches in the music room. So in this document, we unpack what it means to decolonize a music school. Since that curriculum document was drafted and implemented, we've also done an anti-black racism action plan, actually supported by YouthREX, in fact, and most recently a truth and reconciliation action plan. Everything from developing musical land acknowledgements to examining what sort of curriculum is available for us to explore together as a community. We do a lot of work in partnership with what was called Toronto First Nation School and is now called Wandering Spirit. This is not to say that classical music is bad. I don't want you to get the wrong impression, or that it doesn't have a place in our school or school in general. I'm actually, as I mentioned earlier, born of the Royal Conservatory model myself. It isn't an either or, but it's more so a questioning of all of the dead, often male, often white dominated stories that have been celebrated for centuries, and asking whose stories have been muted subsequently. Now I'd like to highlight a few of the exciting musical adventures we've been a part of over the years. When I first started with the school back in 2010, Roger Waters from Pink Floyd would often call on our school. The last 3 tours he did in the city of Toronto, we had our students singing "We Don't Need No Education" in front of crowds of up to 30,000 people. That's the dream, right? It's performance opportunities like these that we pride ourselves on. Once you get that sort of experience in your bones, imagine performing in front of 30,000 people. It helps build a confidence that is actually kind of unparalleled. Not only that, but twice we've brought the legendary jazz ensemble, the Sun Ra Orchestra, up from Philadelphia to perform with our students. Just last Friday, there was a new documentary on Sun Ra that came out on PBS celebrating Black History Month. It is highly recommended. He continues to inspire us from the planet Saturn, which I guess he's since transcended to, since he passed away. He claimed to have been from Saturn, so that's why I mentioned that. It was such an honor to connect our community with these jazz giants. And we're so thrilled to be in a position to make these sort of connections happen, both locally with the amazing roster of artists in our own city and country, and also internationally with artists like Sun Ra, Roger Waters, and Taylor Swift. Maybe I'll play a little bit of this video, but I'm running low on time, so I might not. But this happened basically right before the pandemic. It's a lovely tale, both of ingenuity from the volunteer ad firm BBDO that were supporting us, doing pro bono work, who, by the way, cleaned up at the Leon d'Or Awards that year with this campaign, through to fundraising as an innovative project like this helps fund our not-for-profit model as it generates revenue. We basically got our kids recording a sound library with the producer Frank Dukes. He's a Grammy-winning producer. And basically a year later, Taylor Swift used it on the song that's called "It's Nice to Have a Friend." So I'll play a little bit of this. You see a bit of a less hairy version of me, but I want you to hear just a little bit of this excerpt, and then we'll move on.
Taylor Swift's new release, Lover, is the biggest album on the planet right now, safe to say, and one of the songs has a very cool Canadian connection.
It's nice to have a friend.
The Regent Park School of Music in Toronto is sampled on that track, It's Nice to Have a Friend. The youth music group can be heard playing instruments and singing backup. So joining me now are Richard Marsella, the Executive Director of the Regent Park School of Music, Tomas and Moini, students who performed on the song. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Okay, first of all, congratulations. Like, this coolest thing that's probably ever happening in your high school years. Richard, I want to start with you.
Sure.
How does this happen? How does a Toronto group of students get featured on one of the biggest pop stars' albums?
Well, it's by no mistake, right? A world-class ad firm in BBDO came to us with this idea. They fell in love with what we do as a community music school. And so they connected us with Frank Dukes, this Grammy-winning producer here in the city. And we brought 14 of our students to his studio last December to work on this Parkscapes project. You can learn about that at parkscapes.ca. And from there, we have 11 tracks that Frank Dukes composed for our kids. And it sounds so raw and I think genuine when you get that human feel, right, of the kids that we work with. And we work with 1,000 students across the city of Toronto right now in Regent Park and Jane and Finch. So it meant a lot then, cut to 9 months later, and we knew this might happen. Like, we had this feeling that Frank Dukes would help sell it to other artists that he works with, and he happened to be working with Taylor Swift. So here.
Taylor Swift's new.
I'll have to move us on, but that would keep going with wonderful interviews from Moini and Tomas, who are now both finished university. They just graduated from university and finding work. We're still in touch with them, which is really great. For the last decade, I'm almost finished here. A couple more minutes. Thank you, everyone. We've also run a program with justice-involved youth who are brought to our space once a week in open custody. In this music detention program is actually used as an intervention, hoping to reintegrate students, these youth, back into society via music. So they're composing beats with us, writing lyrics, and producing some really amazing music. This program has been dear to all of our hearts. It's been going on for the last decade, and we're actually hoping to expand this vision a little more. I won't say across the province, but that would be the goal: is to share this knowledge and get music in detention a little more widespread in our province. Since 2016, we many of you may know this, we helped launch a chair position in community music in partnership with York University. That's helped lead over 25 research projects that all directly benefit our Jane and Finch program. It's kind of a part of the reason how we actually connect with YouthREX. Everything from analysis of black composed piano curriculum to steel pan programming, to even recently building a bespoke modular synthesizer, the BAM synth, for our synth clubs across the city. Here's a short demonstration of the BAM synth that you'll be able to soon purchase for a nominal fee, something like $150, which is quite affordable for what this synth can do. And there's an option to buy a second instrument for a CMST student eventually. So we're really excited about this partnership with York, TMU, and CMST. This is the BAM synth, which stands for Building Access in Music Making. It's the name of a network of researchers and community partners, which we're a part of across Canada, all with an eye to basically give more access to music education. Oh, I'll fast forward it a bit. Just last night, we were at the Jane Finch Mall, rocking with young people in a partnership with the Children's Book Bank and the BAM Synth, introducing modular synthesizers in the community. So very exciting stuff. This was a project, I don't have time to play it now, but it's called, if you Google Every Little Voice and Regent Park School of Music, or I can share the link after. This was a pandemic project that featured over 70 of us collaborating together. A song written by Hawksley Workman for Charlotte Siegel, who I mentioned earlier. And we rethought this song together while we were in the pandemic. A project called You're All in the Band, making music together, improvising, that happened last year as part of the Luminato Festival, with about 275 of our students all playing together, improvising, doing drones. It got noisy at times, as you can imagine, but then it all ended with Every Little Voice, which was really charming. Scalability, we're working with our partners in Vancouver, the Sarah McLachlan School of Music, which is a very similar model to ours, and the Lotus Center, on analyzing similarities between our community music programs with an eye for knowledge sharing and possibly building this out a little further across the country. So that's a very exciting project that's in its third phase of research that we're a part of at the moment. So excited to keep developing that as we go. And that's my email, which I'm sure we can share after, and a QR code for how to get involved with the school. And yeah, I'm definitely happy to share links to how to play your world or anything else that was discussed this morning.